Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Kartik Nagarajan. Today, on the fourth episode of our podcast series, The Journey of Global Capability Centers from Setup to Transformation by Next Time, we'll be talking about this particular topic, which is a paradigm shift in GCCs, which is the Global Capability Centers outlook. GCCs in India today account for about 50% globally, with a market size of $35.9 billion. One of the main reasons for the sustained growth of GCCs is the swiftness with which we are able to adapt and resilience in the face of adversities. GCC's ability to think differently, bring innovation, creativity, and prompt decision making on initiatives that have enabled this industry to gain a generational shift in the ways of working. As multinational corporations, we continue to move to a digital and AI enabled first paradigm. We are looking for GCCs to provide emerging technologies leadership drive this transformation. So, for this specific and special topic, today we have Mr. Tanmay Agarwal, VP and Head of Business Shared Services at Hindustan Coca Cola Beverages Private Limited, to further discuss the paradigm shift in the outlook of GCCs. Tanmay has over 2.5 decades of rich cross experience in supply chain, finance, commercial, and have played various senior business head roles with penal responsibility at both operation and strategic levels. Over the years, he's undertaken significant roles in multinationals like Genpact, Seat, Hindustan Unilever, and has been applauded and recognized for his contributions. Welcome, Tanmay. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Karthik, and really privileged to be part of this session.
Likewise, Tanmay. So we'll set the ball rolling. So the first question for you is: in recent years, GCCs have been moving up the value chain due to the global trend towards adopting advanced digital technologies. What, in your opinion, are the strategic levers to improve the organization's bottom line through GCCs?
Yeah, thanks, Karthik, for that question. And I'm really glad that you called out that how GCCs have evolved over the last few years. And and in the India context, almost 1.5% of our GDP and growing. I think the time has come where the leadership at GCC and this entire ecosystem is really dreaming big and establishing a compelling vision for the industry at large. Coming to your question on the digital technologies and advanced digital technologies and how that is contributing to the bottom line. I think before we get there, what's important for all of us to understand is that technology or digital technologies or new technologies are only enablers. And what is very important is to understand what is the problem that we are trying to solve for. What is very important is a very deep collaboration and understanding of the business. Because there's no dearth of technology. The issue is exponential technology with incremental thinking will only give us incremental results. And I think what is the need of the hour is exponential technology along with exponential thinking. And what is needed there is first understanding what the business priorities are, what the enterprise vision is, what is the purpose of the enterprise at large, and translating that into what the global capability centers vision and goals and work that matters can be. So for example, if sustainability is a big agenda for large corporates, that needs to be part of the compelling vision for GCCs. If improving market share, driving margins is a big agenda for the enterprise, then that needs to be part of the agenda of the GCCs. And technology and digital capabilities need to enable driving those outcomes. So I think in a nutshell, it's about deep understanding of the business and collaboration with the business, and first understanding what is it that we want to solve for before we look at what's the digital technology and how it can contribute to the bottom line.
Hmm. Makes sense. And if we take the thought to a particular direction, right, which means while there is a huge play for technology and digital innovation, etc. But the mindset or the incremental thinking has to go to a very exponential part, right? I mean that's a crux of what you just said. Given that being a fact, right?
Mhm.
What would you recommend for GCCs to ensure that they constantly raise the bar on one, alignment with the parent organization, second, innovation, third is the transformation. So how do they ensure that they stay relevant, one, to the parent organization, second, to the parent organization's reality, right? It could be sustainability agenda, market share, M&A, etc. So what's your thought on all this?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, Karthik. And maybe before I get into what are the specific things that GCCs can do in that regard, I think it all starts with leadership. And when I say leadership, it's about, can the leadership at GCC take charge and lead from the front in some of these things that we just mentioned, whether it is innovation, whether it is driving the larger enterprise agenda, and really drive it as a leader versus being asked to do that, this is what needs to be done, and then driving it. So that's the first thing. The second piece, and again linked to leadership, is about how do we ensure as GCCs that the CEO of the corporate, the CXOs of the corporate, are really enthused and engaged with all that we do, and how can we be the trusted advisors to the CXO organization. I think GCCs have led the show in terms of being relevant and changing and adapting to what new technologies have been. And that, I think, is something that needs to be converted into value for the organization with a growth mindset. Specific to what has worked well for us, now, if I take innovation as an example, right? The startup ecosystem is a huge ecosystem in India. They they leverage technology, they are fast and agile, and they are able to adapt to what the problem that we want to solve for. In that context, I think it is very important for GCCs to leverage that ecosystem through an accelerator program, or through by co-creating and solving for enterprise level problems with the startup world. And I'll just give you an example. A young startup came to us saying that they recruit the hotels for Zomato as a client, and they have a system where their app is able to recruit these hotels for Zomato on the go. And we then
Mhm.
thought about this as an example of what he's doing for a very different industry and how it could be applied in our industry. And we work together to create a very low cost and effective solution, which now takes care of all our customer masters, vendor masters, finance masters, the product masters, and it is mobile enabled and working beautifully well, and has a potential to scale up at large. Another example where we worked with a
Wow.
startup where we were looking at the talent acquisition space, and we then designed and co-created with this startup on a AI based talent acquisition engine, which significantly enhances the experience, whether it is of the hiring manager or of the associate being hired. And this again has the potential to scale up to multiple countries. So I think the startup ecosystem is a big ecosystem. Doing hackathons, doing these competitions is a big thing that can be leveraged to drive this from the front.
Got it. And maybe, let's say, and the examples that you gave, right, in terms of how did you leverage, and there's always a risk element to the new things, one would want to try, correct? But despite that, I think there are success stories. So, really kudos to you and the leadership. Taking it to a next level in terms of, let's say, as GCC, right? I mean, while there is an ecosystem you beautifully described, and there is a synergy, right? I mean, if you are, let's say, the de facto, advisory for your parent organization, etc. What are the new age factors that you believe that can be added as a value to the GCC operations, both in India and globally? What are things that you feel? Because ultimately, one is strategic, in terms of your alignment, in terms of you not being told what to do, but by the way, also leading from the front, right? And like you said, it could be the go-to-market strategy, it could be innovation, etc. But let's say from the new age factor, what are the things that can add value to GCC operations, both for you and globally for your organization?
Yeah, and I think see, the I think that's a great question, Karthik, because the traditional GCCs, the way they have been approached and the way they have been looked at from a point of view of finance, HR, procurement, supply chain operations, and all of transactions being done in the most efficient and effective way. I think that's a given, and that's really the baseline. Uh, Now, what are some of those newer areas that GCCs must definitely look into? And I touched upon when you asked me, what's the way in which GCCs can start contributing to the larger
Correct.
parent. Uh, I think sustainability is top of the agenda, and you know how important it is for everyone. Um, for us, we have a net zero goal by 2050. Many organizations have it much earlier. There is a 25% reduction in the carbon footprint by 2030. If you were to ask me this question 3 years back or 4 years back, I mean, what role would GCCs play in this? But but I was leading with a large cross-functional team, uh, a complete setup of an ecosystem for 100% plastic waste management, and that is so important to collect back all the plastic that we send out into the environment and ensure that it is getting recycled is so important for the environment. Now, areas like these in the ESG space or in the sustainability space, what we have done to processes like finance, procurement, HR, or supply chain can be replicated and can help take the organization leaps ahead and fast enough, because I think we have the capability to understand, dissect, and automate and leverage the technology to make that impact. So I think that's a
Hmm.
big area. The second big area, in my view, is about analytics, and I think that has been beaten to death. But in my view, there is so much that can be done leveraging analytics for the larger organization with the ocean of data that GCCs sit on, uh, our own internal data or external data. And there again, the point that I spoke about in terms of deep collaboration with the business and understanding the business problem and then creating the mental model and then leveraging the predictive data science to really come up with value and a competitive advantage for the company. I think these are the two big buckets that I see can really can be the front runners, I would say, for GCC's point of view.
Got it. And makes perfect sense, because what we also see, the way the market dynamics is playing out, I think it is up there already. So from that perspective, let's say if we see a trend wherein the organizations becoming more mindful of the importance of sustainability, like you said, the net zero for your organizations by 2050, right? And times to come. While operating a GCC with other global objectives, how critical is this sustainability agenda for you and your stakeholders, right? Because the ultimate objective of GCC is to drive efficiency, to make global processes and operations, and therefore contribute from that perspective. And overnight we get to hear that sustainability becomes the top three agenda and consistent agenda, right? But when you're talking about 2050, you're talking about 28 more years with the same agenda, right? Never easy. So what's your view? How do you manage all this then?
Yeah, no, and if I've understood your question right, so see, driving efficiency and driving it in the best possible way, leveraging technology on our existing processes are a given. And when I say sustainability, which is the larger organization objective, I think there is, and I'm
mm,
just trying to put some more, flesh and meat in terms of how GCCs can contribute. I think
mm,
there is a huge, from now that I've been in this area for about a year and a half, and there is a big need to understand the entire landscape and be able to bring visibility to this complex landscape, to be able to understand the various drivers, to be able to look at the system of records and the data sets coming in from there, to be even able to say that where am I today on the carbon footprint journey, right? And imagine a large
mm,
corporate
mm,
like
mm,
ours operating in 200 plus countries in the world. We only don't operate in three countries now once the Russian war started. Uh, and for a large corporate like this, and then consolidating it and bringing it all together is a nightmare. And imagine the governance
true.
around all of this, the data accuracy around all of this is humongous a task. And
Mm,
GCCs are well placed to kind of bring some method to this madness, whether it is leveraging
mm,
IoTs
mm,
and smart metering, etc., in plants, whether it is leveraging the process standardization that is required to get this going, and then bringing in visibility to drive that impact. So it's a
mm.
journey, it's a long journey, and it can create massive impact.
And are you also saying this because, in a very different lens, we can also redescribe GCC as global process center or global advisory center, right? Something on these lines. So therefore, there is a process centricity you already have, along with the way to solve a problem and etc. So with that being said, can you also shed some more light, right, in the emerging models of sustainability? And I'm sure our listeners will and can benefit from your words of wisdom on sustainability adoption. What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, and you're right. So I think instead of calling ourselves global capability center, and nothing wrong with that, we could also call ourselves, to your point, Karthik, business solution centers, or
Mm,
so
mm,
giving
true.
solutions for problems of the business. And coming back to your point on what else that can be done on sustainability, and just to give you an example, in our context, water and conserving water is very
Mm,
important. Uh, Reducing the plastic and packaging is extremely important, along
mm,
with collecting and
mhm,
recycling. It's also important to look at sustainable
mhm,
agriculture. And then, of course, uh, it's not just about the carbon footprint, but it is also about diversity and inclusion, and 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 social inclusion. And on that point, again, GCCs, and I was speaking about this in one of our conferences, that social impact through rural shoring. So there are so many tier two and tier
mm,
three towns, and how can we be part of contributing to that social inclusion by hiring, by actually training and then hiring people who are in the tier 2 and tier 3 from parts of society which are not as privileged. So that's also about social
mm,
impact,
mm.
and that's a big impact that we can play. I mean, we hire millions of people as an industry, and how can we create that social impact? So that's a big area. uh,
Correct.
on on digitization, which is fundamentally going paperless, and there's a lot of stuff that GCCs have been already doing, and that helps make a greener environment and a greener planet. How can we get to 100% digital invoices and no paper through systems that we operate, right?
Mm,
So there are various small and big initiatives that can be taken in that space that add up to the larger global goal of sustainability.
Hmm. Got it. And coming to the core, right, which is GCCs, and we all have seen a lot of trends evolving. For example, GCC have changed from a single function cost arbitrage to a multifunctional, regional, global, right, integrated center of excellence. So, would it be right to say that uh, we are in the trend of seeing more from the GCC in the coming decades? And what's your prediction on the trends? What you know?
Yeah, I think this is a growth industry very clearly. And
Hmm.
like you mentioned, I think 50% is probably what is penetrated. And sometimes I'm amazed that even large multinational corporations are yet to begin their journey, while there are some large
Hmm.
corporations who are at a very mature stage of the journey. So there are so the
Hmm.
point I think is that there are different organizations at different stages of evolution, and therefore, we are not yet in a stage where we have matured as an industry. There is definitely far more to come, and there is definitely far more that we can contribute to, and definitely far
Hmm.
more that we can be the ones that drive the competitive advantage for the organization. Now, whether it is through sustainability, whether it's through innovation, whether it is through human experience and customer experience that we create, because we're all now in an experience economy, I think all of these areas will keep evolving at different levels for where the organization is in their journey. So it's a continuous journey, and we need to keep reinventing ourselves and keep adding value.
Absolutely, I think very well articulated. So, with that, that brings to a end of this conversation. Thank you, Tanmay, for a very informative yet very interesting conversation on the topic, which is the paradigm shift in global capability centers outlook. And the reflection and the insights that you provided will be very helpful for our listeners, I'm very sure. And thank you everyone for listening in. If you have any questions or have suggestions for future topics, please write to us at thinknext@nextgem.com. And thank you, Tanmay, once again. Thanks for insight.
Thank you, Karthik. This was very good.